Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Worley. I'm with Northgate Dialogue, and that came out of the Northgate to Burning Man through Modoc County. And we do a ministry to Burning Man where we go out for 8 days and we go inside the burn and camp, and we have the Camp of the Unknown God, and that we are able to share our faith for 8 solid days with people who have a pagan worldview. And it's one of the places that I get to share the gospel in 1 week more than I do in months, because the people are there, and they're there for a search, they're there for meaning, they're there to have some type of event in their life that has meaning and joy, which can only be found in Christ. And so, as Acts 17 says, he went to the Stoics and the Epicureans, and the backdrop is basically a modern day Burning Man. He's dealing with those who he quotes their philosophers and so forth, and he engages. Now, with that being said, I wanted to introduce you to their guest today on the topic of human trafficking, and it's Mr. Shawn Cleveland, and he has in the past I've been taken back by his knowledge and understanding of this subject. And Shawn, welcome to the show. And
thank you.
Hey, can you give us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like you said, I'm Shawn Cleveland. I'm an executive director of the Human Trafficking Collaborative of Lorain County. We've been doing this since about 2009, where we started laying the foundation for a collaborative here in our county in Lorain. And actually right now we're in the middle of a restart. We lost a lot of members that had things happen in their lives. And of course, we've all been through a traumatic year through 2020. But so I'm doing a restart right now, bringing in new people and building a bigger collaborative effort here to really reach out to our community and to make people aware of this issue of human trafficking that is taking place among us. And it's a very important topic. This is something that has a grip on the entire world. It's very important, and it's very vital that we make people's eyes open to this criminal enterprise that is taking place on our planet.
Okay, and with your organization, what kind of things do you do, and how do you reach out and give talks, or do you get involved with helping take down trafficking networks?
Well, basically, what we do a lot of awareness. We train up people, teach them how to present information on human trafficking, which is very vital. And to start off, human trafficking is basically modern day slavery. And slavery didn't go away with the Emancipation Proclamation under Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people think that, but it was outlawed, but it was not eradicated. And we still have slavery here in the United States, as well as many other countries throughout this world where people are enslaved as sex slaves or for labor. So our job is to get that information out to our communities that is happening here. It's not something that's happened only in third world countries, which a lot of Americans believe, oh, that happens in the Philippines, that happens in Mexico, that happens over in Pakistan. It happens here in America, where people are forced into slavery. People are being used as sex slaves, used as cheap labor or free labor, to being forced into it. And so we do a lot of presentations. We'll go to different places like businesses, schools, colleges. We work with local law enforcement. I trained a lot of local law enforcement officers myself. We go into churches, we go out on the streets, and we connect with people, and we put up flyers, we hand out information. We do shows like this. We've held some conferences around our county here, and we just go wherever we can find people that are willing to listen, and we share knowledge about human trafficking, modern day slavery. We have found some victims here and there, thank the Lord, and that's why we work with law enforcement. We don't have any law enforcement powers. We actually have one person on who's one of our directors who is a police officer, but I can't go and arrest somebody. I can't go into somebody's house. I can't go get a warrant. So we work hand in hand with local law enforcement as well as local politicians and other organizations like churches, women's shelters, homeless shelters, of that sort. So that's how we really get into our community.
One of the things that I worked at one time many years ago for a very large police department as a technician, communications technician, and I took care of fire. I was one of these people that was under public works, so I wasn't officially in the police department itself, but I was their technical support. So I got to meet a lot of officers, and I met officers that were into the juvenile exploitation and pornography of children. And it was, everything from really young, up into the teenagers. And so I'd get to talk to them, and I always want to learn things. So they told me about a term called a gopher, and what a gopher would do. And a gopher being somebody that goes out and will go in an area and target, with some story that, their acting group or so forth, to get actors to put them on, make them a movie star, basically. So I'm living up in extreme Northern California, and lo and behold, somebody tried to talk to my wife and my daughter about a movie career. And when they came back with actually a package of information about his work. And I realized he's a gopher. This is not real. And so I had contacted some of my law enforcement friends, and I told them that I did the primary investigation where I called the numbers, and I called at night, and their phones would be busied out. And I knew right there that there was a reason for that. And so when I called this exploitation group, they said, "Bob, you got a direct hit, send us the information." And later on, I found out they said, yes, it was going on, but this guy actually moved to Las Vegas. We're informing that department to be on lookout for him. Now, probably the only reason, I'm sad to say, is that because I had somebody explain this process to me. And so when you educate people, and I'm getting to a point here, Shawn, do you educate them in the ways that they can spot, or safety methods that they could use to protect their family?
Oh, definitely. We make sure that they understand what human trafficking is and what it looks like. And we're tight. We go out, especially with our young people. They're the main target area. Most people enter into the human trafficking trade starting at the age of 12 to 14. that they bring in victims. And we let, especially our young people, know that a lot of these human traffickers will send out people their own age. They use other young people to go out and to talk to these young people, because if you and I, we're human traffickers, if we go to a local high school and we're hanging out with all these teenagers and we're trying to get them to go with us, we're going to stand out in the crowd, of course, because we're hanging out with a bunch of young people, and people are going to want to know, who are we and why are we hanging out with young people? So what we'll do, we'll get recruiters, as they're called, and we'll get a teenager, say a 14-year-old, and we're going after young girls. We'll get a good-looking young guy, 14, 15, maybe 16 years old, and pay him and say, look, you're working for us, go get us some girls. And so he'll go and he'll hang out and he'll blend right in because he's a teenager as well. And he'll start talking to these young girls. And hey, I know there's one place that's hiring. They're looking for models. You're beautiful. I think you could do this. Really? Yeah. And so he would instruct them to go to a beauty parlor or some other place of business where they would meet the traffickers. And the thing about human traffickers, we get this vision of them just running up and just snatching people off the street. That does happen, but not a lot. Usually they set up people like what happened with your family. You know, they set you up and they send out all this false information. Hey, there's this great job, and there's a lot of job postings you'll see on telephone poles, and there's not a lot of information. And you'll call this number and they'll tell you come to this place, and they'll talk you into getting involved with them, and you'll come to work for them, maybe for a modeling agency or even a beauty parlor, and they get you in there, and next thing we know, you disappeared. They've taken you, and now they're turning you into a sex slave or free labor. And that's one of the ways that they get you. And even now with the internet, you know, we have Zoom, so you and I can talk from a long distance. But with the internet also, these men get on there, and women also, and they befriend our children. They don't have to break into people's houses anymore and take them. They just come across on Facebook or Instagram or Tinder and TikTok, and they communicate with our children through games like Fortnite, and they become their best friend, and they tell them great things, and they're like, hey, we should meet and hang out. And they'll meet and hang out with you and take you out to eat, maybe buy you some stuff and let you go home. And our young people think, hey, this guy's okay. And so they'll start hanging out with them. And before we know it, you've disappeared. Why? Because this person just set you up. They let you think that they're okay. They let you think that they're a great person and that you can trust them. And when they earn your trust, that's when they snatch you. So we have to be careful who we talk to online, who we allow to be our Facebook friends, and who want to meet us and in person, because they're setting us up using modern technology and job offers, and we have to be very, very careful with this.
Now, one of the things is that, you know, I know you go to like churches and give these talks and with police departments and so forth. Are there things that you train the parents and relatives on that are red flags that they can communicate with their kids, or that they can be aware?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, some of the red flags. If you see an older man hanging out, say, with a group of young girls, and especially these young girls of different ethnic groups, say a white male's hanging out, older white male's hanging out with a young Black girl, also a young Puerto Rican girl, a young Asian girl, and you see he's controlling their movements and they can't walk away from him. They can't speak for themselves. If you go up there and say hi to him, how are you doing? He speaks for them. That's a red flag for parents. If your child starts coming home and they come home with new stuff like new laptops or new clothes, stuff they can't afford, especially if they don't have a job, and all of a sudden they're wearing new stuff, they have new technology, and you didn't pay for it, and you know they couldn't afford it. That's a red flag. They're hanging out with somebody who's paying for that stuff, and they're probably expecting something in return. And so it's very, very vital to pay attention to these red flags. Also, for those who are in the medical field, say a man brings in a young girl to the emergency room. Look for things like specific tattoos. A lot of traffickers, that what they'll do, they'll tattoo their names or an emblem that they created for themselves, and they brand these young people like we would brand cattle. Some of them even put tattoos of the barcodes like you see on product when you go to the store and you buy something and they scan the barcode at the cash register. They'll tattoo barcodes on their victims, showing that they're nothing but product to it. So those in the medical field, you see they have these specific tattoos, or you keep seeing the same tattoo showing up on young women. And especially these young women have multiple STIs. You know, a 12-year-old girl with 3, 4, 5 different STIs means she's very sexually active, and you're wondering what's going on with this girl, and or even a young boy. They have they don't look well nourished, and they have bad dental hygiene. These can be our red flags for those in the medical field, and for anybody else who may notice it, a teacher, a pastor, a relative. And that's a really sad thing. 70% of the children trafficked here in the United States are trafficked by people they know, relatives, family, friends, teachers, pastors, police officers, people that they know. They're not being trafficked by some stranger who snatched them off the street, but they may be being trafficked by their own parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings. So we have to watch for any change in our children, their eating habits, their grades start to drop. They're a straight A student, all of a sudden they're failing everything. They don't have an appetite. They're withdrawn. They don't want to speak to anybody. This was a vibrant child. Now they're unhappy about everything. These are some of the red flags that we should be looking for.
I know that, raising 2 children of my own, that my wife and I, early on said that we're going to communicate with our kids. I mean, we're going to, in a real manner. There was very few discussions that we had that they weren't involved with. Like we used to have to drive like 4 hours to get to where we could buy a lot of groceries and stuff to a city. We're in a country community, and they'd be in the back seat, and we'd have real conversations, right, and so forth. And my wife, I remember she bought one of these Teen Beat magazines because my daughter wanted one, and they went through it and said, now and read through it and said, now, what do you think about this? Is that, would that a good thing? Oh, no, no. And actually, we trained them up. And still, even with all that, I think that, when the gopher came in the community I was in, right, he had gone to the fair and met people. He'd gone inside the churches and met people. And all of a sudden, when the heat got on him, because I turned him in to the local authorities also with the information, one of the deputies told me, they said, when we went out to get him, he was gone. Almost like, I felt like almost like he knew they were coming. And, whatever he had, he left there and he left. So it's a real thing. And as much as we try to communicate to our kids, we can give them the tools and so forth, but we always got to be involved in our children's lives. And what you're telling me, that's good information that I think I'm hoping that everybody listens to this starts thinking about that and comes aware of all this. And that's what you said, that you do an awareness type of teaching. Now, what are some of the well, number one, the barcode situation. I remember seeing a show, one of those like special victim unit type shows, and they were finding these girls that had barcodes on them. And I didn't really think that that would have been real, but it sounds like they've taken that from real life, and that these people seem to have black or hardened hearts, I should say, of evil, that that kind of stuff, the kids are just a product. It is, and so there must be a lot of money in this, of course. Now, what kind of are there difference between the sex trafficking of ethnic groups? Like, do you find it in white, Latino, Black, Asian, as far as in America here? Uh, is there any profile? Like, do we have groups like cartels that are doing this, or European organizations or different countries? I know in Europe it's a real problem, and then they get taken out into other countries. So what about the ethnic or cultural uh, aspect of all this?
It's happening in every country, and it's big business. Business is $1 billion industry. Right now, the only criminal enterprise making a little bit more money than human trafficking is still the drug trade. And so a lot of criminals, like you said, some of the cartels, uh, other criminal organizations, street gangs, uh, they find a way to make money, then this is an easy way. And it's mainly because if I get caught with 50 kilos of cocaine, I'm not going to be able to talk my way out of that. Cops pull me over, look in my trunk, I got a bunch of cocaine, I'm in trouble. When the cops pull me over and I have a young girl with me, oh, she's my niece or she's a daughter of one of my friends who I'm taking home. And the police like, oh, okay. And so it's easier to get away with selling children than selling drugs. But it's something that's happening everywhere. It doesn't discriminate. It's like drugs. Drugs don't discriminate. They don't care who they destroy. They don't care who they get a hold of. And so it is easier to get a hold of certain people groups, uh, people who are homeless. A lot of homeless children are used because they're off the grid. People may not pay attention to them because they're out in the street. Children who are special needs, They're abused a lot. People don't believe them, and they're dealing especially with some form of mental illness. The mentally ill are just such an easy target to be abused in this way and to be sold and to be given over. Young people come from broken homes or from low income homes. And like I said, a lot of them are being even sold by their own families into this enterprise, which is such a sad thing. This whole thing is sad, but when your own family, and it makes me kind of think of the story of Joseph, where his brothers were going to kill him at first and end up selling him into slavery. This has been going on for a long time. And it's happening here in the United States and Europe. It happens in Latin America. It happens over in Asia and the African continent. It's everywhere we turn and look. And whoever you can get a hold of, get a hold of. That's their mentality. And they'll sell your child, they'll sell your daughters and your sisters and your sons, and they don't care. And so they seek them out wherever they can find them.
Let's say that we have a child that ends up missing in a sex trafficker. Got this kid like in Los Angeles. Do they ship them to different locations throughout the country or to other countries, or do they keep them local? I mean, it's probably a little bit of all of that, but what's kind of the common thing?
Like you said, all of the above. It all depends on the trafficker and who these people are working for that took the child, if they're filling an order, so to speak. They're working for somebody who wants a specific, I want a 12-year-old girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, or I want a young African-American girl with hazel brown eyes. I want a young boy who's Asian. And that person is overseas. The child could end up overseas if they're just a local group that's trafficking in their local area. Then the child will stay local, or they can transport them to another state. Like you said, all the above.
Now, one of the things that I've heard, and so you could probably confirm this, this is common, but now the kids in high schools may be associated with a gang or independently sex trafficking themselves as high school students that are actually in the same school with a girl. And so, little nice Johnny comes home with your daughter or something like that, and then all of a sudden, maybe a month or two later, she's gone. This seems to be becoming more and more of a common scenario, or is it a common scenario?
Yes, it is a common scenario. Like I said earlier, these traffickers will send a young man, another teenager, into the midst of other teenagers. It'll be somebody you go to school with, and he could be prostituting girls, and they don't necessarily have to disappear.
Okay.
They'll continue to go to school, come home. We did a project with a well-known human trafficking advocate. Her name is Theresa Flores, and she was a victim of human trafficking by one of the guys she went to high school with, and he had tricked her into hanging out with him because she actually liked him, and he gave her a ride home from school one day, and he said he had to stop at his house first and invited her in, and he gave her a can of pop, which had a roofie in it. And when she passed out, he did all these things to her. And his cousin was there, and he had a camera, and he took all these pictures. And then the next day, she saw him and didn't want to talk to him, but he stopped her and said, "Look at all these pictures now. If you don't do what I tell you to do, all these pictures are going to show up at your parents' house and their jobs, at your brother's school, at your church, at your priest's house. You had to listen to me, and she did, and she was brought into the trafficking organization, and she was being pimped out, and she would go to school, go home, do her homework or chores, have dinner with her family, watch TV with them. At night, everybody would go to bed, but she would sneak out and be prostituted and be back home before anybody woke up. And her parents never knew that this was happening to her.
Now, these high school students that are like the Gophers, are they being trafficked themselves, or are they doing this for money, or why are they involved in this? Is it just a money angle?
Money angle, or they may actually, have some type of relationship with the trafficker. It could be their friend or their child or another family member. Some can be victims of trafficking that have now graduated from just being a victim to now being a recruiter and getting paid good money to do it. And now they went from victim to victimizer. So that's not uncommon for that to happen.
Now, you mentioned the roofie, which is a date rape drug,
Right.
and is now I would imagine that would be, of course, probably common in the local setting of taking somebody to their home and giving them that roofie, and then they pass out or whatever. But what about on like the bar scene? You got people that are going out and they don't have discos anymore probably, but to nightclubs. And do we start finding people missing out of nightclubs?
Yeah, the same scenario. They slip them something in their drink. They get all dizzy, and the guy's like, "Oh, let me help you out to your car, or I can give you a ride home." And that woman disappears, or that man disappears. It's nothing new. This has been going on for a while, and they can disappear from a nightclub, a bar, a restaurant, wherever they get opportunity to snatch them.
Now, how common, and I know that you've covered it, that it's everywhere, but how common is this? I mean, you got an organization that's trying to warn people and tell them about the red flags. Is this like something that's so common that, of course, the parents should be on guard all the time, but is this an epidemic?
It's a worldwide epidemic. We've been talking about worldwide pandemic with COVID-19, but this is, like I said, it's nothing new. A lot of people still call it prostitution,
Right.
and because prostitution is human trafficking. And yes, some people do get into prostitution willingly, but seriously, who wakes up one morning and goes, "You know what? I think I'll be a prostitute." A lot are forced into that life, or a lot of them have a mental issue or a drug problem, and they get into that life because somebody tells them, that's the way you can make money to support your habit. And but other times they're being forced, coerced. If you don't do this, I'll kill your family. And that's one of the big ways. You threaten somebody's family. Theresa Flores, the woman I told you about, who was a high school student, she tried to quit this organization, this human trafficking ring, and her dog disappeared, the family dog. The next day, the dog was found on their front lawn, shot to death. And she got a phone call, and they said, "Next time is going to be your little brother." So she went back to the human trafficking group. So this has been going on and is happening everywhere. Prostitution, red light districts, mail order, brides. This is big business.
Now, the mail order brides, is that a common theme for sex traffickers? Are they, how does that work?
Women want to make it to America and they sell them as brides to men who have the funds to get them here and become their wives, and they do whatever that man says. And mail order brides, that's nothing new either. You know, you can get contact and you can order your own woman you want, just like you can go to a restaurant and order your favorite meal. It's that simple.
So
unfortunately.
So there, it sounds like in this type of situation that the person that's being sold or doing the mail order bride is possibly under a threat of things happening to their family if they don't comply, or if they get, let's say they got to America from Europe somewhere, and you know, people would just think, well, once they get here, they could, you know, try to run off or inform the authorities, but there must be a fear factor is what I'm getting at.
Yes, there's a huge fear factor. Most people are wedding into the sex trade, they're tricked into it. Like we were talking about earlier about the modeling agencies and the promise of a good job, or they're coerced. And what happens, say, I go out and I order a young lady and from you, and you tell her she has to go and do this and be with me, and she doesn't want to go, and then you pull out pictures of her family. Oh, here's your mother at her job. Oh, here's your little brother at his school. Oh, here's your sister. Look at her. Isn't she beautiful? She's at her Girl Scout meeting. And they're just shocked that you know all these things about their family. And you tell them, I know where your father works, where your mother works, where your brothers and sisters go to school. And if you don't do what I tell you, they're dead. And well, that happens a lot when, say, a lot of Mexican workers are forced into coming stateside to the United States, and they're brought here, promised a job, and they get here and find out that they're just slaves. And they're told, hey, if you try to run away, I want to show you something, and pull out the pictures. Here's your mother down here in Cancun, Mexico, where your family lives. Like, well, yeah, isn't that their house right here in this picture? Oh, there's your father going to his factory job. Oh yeah, we know where your family lives. We know where they work. Oh, there goes your brother at going to school. Yeah, we have pictures of your family, and we have men in that city right now in Mexico where your family is. And we come in here tomorrow night and find out that you ran away. We'll make a phone call, and our man in that city will kill your entire family. And so they stay with them to protect their families.
Now, I just watched a documentary on a company, a man who had a company, and he had it in like 3 states that produced eggs. So they had all these chickens and everything, and somehow he had done that where he had gotten young kids or maybe a little bit older, and they would threaten their family, and they lived in these old trailers on the property, and it was basically they had no freedom. They barely got enough to live on, and so forth. And once the FBI went in on one of them, you know, they're finding out that there had been, you know, this had been going on for years, and it wasn't an issue of sex, but it was an issue of manual labor here inside the United States. And it sounds like that kind of thing is still going on. And so when we see Hispanic workers, is there a chance that that one guy that maybe even taking care of your lawn or working in a restaurant or a factory could be in that predicament?
That's a possibility. Like I said, you have to look for the red flags, see if they allowed to talk, or even if they don't even understand English. They may be just brought straight from here from their country against their will, and they know nothing about the country, the culture, the language. They have no identification on them. Traffickers will take a worker comes from another country, will take their ID, all their money, anything that they have that's personal. They'll take possession of it and leave them just with basically the clothes on their back. So when they try to escape, nobody can truly identify them, especially if they don't speak the language, even though we have interpreters here, people that can interpret for them. But yeah, looking for the red flags, them having the ability to move freely on their own without anybody controlling their movements. Look into their eyes, see if there's any fear, but be careful. Don't approach somebody you think might be being trafficked unless you're sure you don't want to get them killed or yourself killed.
Okay, so with that being said, that's a good point. You see a situation where it looks like it becomes obvious that they're being sex trafficked or in a situation held hostage, basically. What would be the procedure for the average citizen, such as myself, or mom and dad, seeing something going on in their high school?
Right away, contact the authorities as well as the schools administration. You want to get law enforcement involved right away so they can come and at least question the people about what's going on, or open an investigation so that they're watching and studying the situation. And like I said, you don't want to get directly involved and go out there and say, "Hey, I'm uh, noticing some things. What are you doing with these girls?" And now you can put yourself in danger. But having organizations like the Human Trafficking Group, our group, you can get a hold of us. Then we would contact, like I said, law enforcement. But we don't have any police powers. But you want to definitely get, if you're talking about the school system, you want to contact, the principal as well as law enforcement.
Okay, I had a situation where I tuned into a sexual predator that happened to be a counselor at a school. And I called one of the people on the school board, and they said that I said that there's even evidence that this has happened before, but the school had the guy resign instead of bringing this to light. And so he moves on to another school, right? And he starts the same thing where he's transporting a child to another city to, introduce them to a company and give them kind of a walkthrough of a company or something. And so I was very discouraged with that because the school authorities, there are always politics, that are involved. And so to me, even some law enforcement don't seem to really be really reactive to it. So I've in the past, when local law enforcement hasn't done something, and then you got to start taking step at a time, to get their attention finally, right? But so what I'm getting at with that is that I would basically trust law enforcement more than I would school authorities that basically don't want uh, the publicity of something happening at their school. Do you see that as ever being a problem?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. That's why I would contact both with the school system, those in charge of the school, as well as law enforcement. And you just don't want anything that's in with you, for one thing.
Right.
If there's information that comes out, don't you be the last person that that information reaches. You have to alert the school system and law enforcement so they can work together. And maybe, like you said, maybe school system will try to protect that teacher. If you just tell them, they'll sweep it under the rug. But if you contact them and law enforcement, hopefully the officers will get involved and start investigating.
Okay. Uh, that's actually some good advice, because you're holding the school official accountable, because you've already, or you're going to contact law enforcement, and so there's two parties that have gotten this concern, and so that is now. At the end of the show, I'm going to ask you if there's contact information, how they get a hold of your organization, or other organizations, and so forth, for help. So, a citizen could call an organization like yours and say, and ask questions like, what do I do? Or am I off base? I see this going on. Should I be concerned? Is that a good way to go also?
Yes, I'm just thinking about that, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, um, you know, 1-888-373-7888. Like I said, we'll talk it at the end, but with them, you would call the national hotline and you would tell them where you're from, where you're reporting this from, and they would connect you with whatever law enforcement or human trafficking organization is in your area for you to connect with.
Okay, and so I think I would be the type of person that would want to get a hold of somebody and get advice, instead of leaning on my own understanding and saying, no, I'm going to jump right into this situation. And speaking of which, I understand that during the Obama years, that you received a letter of accommodation. And can you tell us if that's what you received? And also, why was that? What brought that to light?
The President Obama sent some of his people here to Lorain County and at our local Lorain County Community College, and they had a conference, and I was there, and they offered to let like 8 different people come up and talk about their organizations. And I was one of the people that made it up to the podium, and I started talking about human trafficking, and people were really blown away. And one of the women who worked directly with President Obama came and spoke to me afterwards, and we connected, and she gave me her information, and I started doing grassroots conference calls with the White House on different issues, including human trafficking. And they knew what the work we were doing, and they were really impressed at how we're just getting out there, using our own finances, our own time to really fight this issue. And so her name was Julie Rodriguez Chavez, and now she's working with President Biden. But she sent me a letter of accommodation for the work I was doing, and it really blessed me, you know. And so I was able to do a few conference calls. I did one with Michelle Obama. Then I did my final conference call. I went on there with President Obama himself, and he thanked all of us people that were on there with the grassroots and for the work we were doing to continue on and to support President Trump as he was coming into office. And it was a beautiful experience. I was blessed, truly.
Now, would you have you ever been you know, in a situation with your organization where that you've realized there are some sex traffickers or organization that's sex trafficking, and be able to actually turn them into the police, and then the police follow through and made the arrest?
We had an incident where there was a restaurant here in the city of Elyria. I live in Ohio, in Lorain County, and this restaurant had was a Mexican restaurant, and it turns out all the workers were undocumented, and they were being used as labor traffickers. And one of the young men, he was actually sexually assaulted by a few of the other young men. And my partner at the time, Mindy Keebler, she was sexual assault care nurse at a local organization called the Nord Center. And this young man made it there with one of his friends who was American citizen. She took him there, and Mindy called me up there, and we talked to him, and we connected with the Elyria police, and we helped in, you know, a little bit in the investigation. And they were about to move in, but unfortunately, the young man was actually picked up by Border Patrol, and he was deported. The Elyria police kept investigating, but the restaurant owner actually ran off back to Mexico himself before he got caught. But all the workers were taken out of there, and they were taken care of, and were able to connect with family, and they were freed. So we felt good about that.
When someone from another country has found that they had been a victim of sex trafficking or human trafficking of any kind, when the authorities step in, is there actually help for these people as far as from counseling? Or, you know, I would hope that they don't get sent back to the country of origin, you know, empty-handed. You know, is there you know, counseling organizations that can actually help with that? Are they treated by our government with concern, or are they shipped out of the country being a victim?
You know, that's a tough question. You know, a little bit above my pay rate, but it all depends on the situation. And they feel they can make a case, and the people they have are important to their case, or the person is important, they need them there, and then they'll, you know, they'll take care of them. If not, they don't feel it's real important, people get deported. It's
Okay.
a sad thing, you know, it's politics.
right.
So it all depends.
Now, some of these situations are not as much of a money-making situation, but maybe a personal issue situation where they, they build their house in their basement like into a soundproof den where they can keep girls or boys or whatever for their own pleasure. And so you could be in a neighborhood and see a house that looks normal, but the evilness that's going in that house. And I think that that seems to be something that we've seen in the past also. And, that's a little bit different situation. But are there any red flags for something like that? Or is that something that's also, is it also common?
It's common. There's red flags, like I said, especially with different houses. You see people coming in late at night on a regular basis, different cars pulling up, people going in and coming out and leaving, and another car pulls up, they go in, a little while later they come out. And you see this happening a lot on a regular basis, late at night. That looks suspicious. I say that would be a red flag. That's why it's also good to create neighborhood watch parties in your neighborhood. Keep an eye on the people to see what's really going on here. Because like I said, a lot of people are actually trafficked by their own families. So that's hard to really get your finger on what's going on, when it comes to family doing it. And but with a neighborhood watch and working with law enforcement is very vital to what we do and to combat human trafficking.
Now, lately, it's been in the news about, it's been a little bit of time, but the Epstein issue where, he gets caught and somehow he gets off with a slap on the hand. He keeps doing this. He has this alleged island, and he has his lady that's, a part of his group that was, utilizing kids to bring other kids in. I mean, just the classic thing that you're talking about and so forth. That seemed, do you have any comments on that situation? Was anything we can learn from it, or we just see the reality of it?
Jeffrey Epstein, that's one of the more scarier situations because he's a man of wealth and power. And he had a lot of powerful friends, a lot of wealthy friends, a lot of famous friends. And, I'm not going to start naming names, but if you look it up, Jeffrey Epstein, and you see, even in the news, they were naming famous politicians, actors, singers. I mean, big time celebrities. And with that, you got so many people who are able to protect him because they got money, they got power, they got influence, and they know people in the political realms, and they know people in the political system, the judicial system. And so he was able to get away with it for such a long time because of his connections. But eventually he became a liability, and he got caught and he went to prison. Well, he was about to go to prison. He was in jail and he supposedly committed suicide. A lot of people don't believe it's suicide. They believe he was taken out because he knew too much. And with situations like that, you have to be very careful because you you don't know who's really involved. And you can find yourself squaring off against people who have a lot of power and a lot of money. And it's a shame. People you think you should be able to trust and to actually depend upon, they're just as crooked as the next guy, and they're in there getting their money, and they're abusing women and children and men, and it's like I said, it's everywhere. It happens in our nation's capital. It happens in our government, in our military, in our schools, in our churches. It's really sad. And when you get into this and start fighting this, you learn some dirty secrets and about who the players are.
Yeah, I guess at that level, you could end up, the innocent could end up in prison while the predators go free. I want to, before we sign off, is that you had mentioned about this being a modern day slavery. And one of the things I think that as a culture that we have here, let's say in the United States, is that there's a lot of emphasis put on, about America's original sin being slavery. And, once the, Civil War happened, then you had a little bit of period where it seemed that this is going to work, it's freedom. Then you have, of course, out of the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan coming from the Confederate side. Then you end up having this Jim Crow situation. Then you end up in the civil rights of the 60s. And one of the things that I think is a culture that that I see out there is we have a Pollyanna view of humanity, and that slavery was something that happened, of course, with the Jewish people in Egypt. It happened in the Islamic kingdom also during that time. It was happening throughout the world. And I used to have a coworker that was from Jamaica, and he frankly just said that he knew the history of slavery, and it's a human problem. And why I'm getting to this, it's like, well, not in our neighborhood, right? We have a disease, and that disease is sin, and we have depravity that's out there. And it's not just danger stranger in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, or Los Angeles, California, but we have the human race in small communities. That things, they happen because of the nature of man's predicament that we're in. And so if we are not accepting of that view and having that worldview, we could get locked into not in my neighborhood type of situation, or it's only, you know, you know, people from, like you had said before, like maybe like drug cartels are only doing this, not knowing that at our local church, right, that something bad is going on. And so, did you want to make any comments on like what I just said? Am I kind of, or am I off base? And the connection to slavery, I think you're right. We got rid of one slavery, right? But there's all types of slaveries out there that bring us into bondage.
True, very true. And slavery didn't leave, it just went underground. And it became a big business. And so it pops up everywhere, like you said, even in small communities, little townships and rural places, it's happening. Like I said earlier, it doesn't discriminate. Doesn't care how much money you have, doesn't care how poor you are, doesn't care if you're black, doesn't care if you're white, doesn't care if you're educated, doesn't care if you're uneducated. All that matters is it finds victims to exploit for money. And that's all that matters. And it's done by in every walk of life. People will exploit other people. We've always exploited each other. It's a shame. And it doesn't matter where you come from, what your last name is, what you do, what you claim to be. Human trafficking is real. Human traffickers are everywhere. And we have to fight this. And it's worldwide, it's in your community. It may even be in your school or even in your family, you don't even know it. So we have to be sober and vigilant, as the scriptures say, and pay attention to what's going on around us.
It seems, I'd like to know that this program that people watching it could learn a few things to bring to detect red flags. But not only that, is that in my family, my son and my daughter, my wife and I, we had very few babysitters while they were growing up. I mean, it was just a few times. Instead of going to church groups and having them go to youth group ministries and stuff like that, we did stuff with them, but we were involved. And we were blessed. I got to say, we were very blessed with the situation we were in. And just one of the things that, that I see is that, a lot of kids, when they get older, they leave the faith that they were brought up into. And I think that that's why I feel as a parent, right, that's one of my first ministries is my wife and my kids. And I'm also responsible for those in the community out there, and not, to get, I am a person that gets involved. I've been in trouble because of it, but you know what, I can sleep at night. And so I kind of I think the show has been kind of a wide spectrum of issues that we've covered just on the issue of sex trafficking, or human trafficking, I should say. As we end the show, the one thing is that I would like to ask you is that you and I were both had shows or did shows on Limited X Radio. Jeremy Bowling had a major effect in my life. And what that was I was actually in a real bad situation about an issue that I had gotten involved with to fight against a certain church system. And I just lost everybody around me that said they were my friends and so forth. Well, there was a few exceptions. But when I met Jeremy, he had had the same issues and so forth, but he was one that, did something about it. And through Limited X Radio, he got me used to the podcast world. And he has gone to be with the Lord. And I'm just very thankful. But what I'm getting at here, can you tell us a little bit about your faith in Christ?
I was raised up in the Pentecostal movement. And like you, like Jeremy, I saw some things. And when I myself got saved and I started studying scripture and asking questions, I felt, there are some things that weren't right from what I was told. And so my heart was to truly know the things of the Lord, to know true biblical doctrine, and to share it with others. And I was a missionary for a few years in the country of Mexico. I did a lot of street evangelism. But it was through my friend Brad Worley. He knew Jeremy, and he invited me and another one of our brothers, Dana Mislinski. He's also gone on to be with the Lord. Me, Dana, and Brad started doing a show together, a roundtable on Ribbon and X radio. That Jeremy Bowling started this internet radio station, and after a while, our roundtable ended, and myself and Dana started doing our own shows, and I felt a lot of freedom to be able to communicate about the truth of the gospel and not just get caught up in a church organization, get caught up in that 501c3 mentality when it comes to the church and the body. And so Jeremy really gave me a platform to truly speak the truth. And I'm so grateful for him for doing that, for myself, for you, for others, and to be able to minister the gospel message from your own home and reach people in different countries. You know, me being a missionary, that's a beautiful thing. And I want to probably start doing something what you're doing now to get back out there and to really start reaching out again to different people in different areas, and to let them know that our King still sits on the throne. We're going through some hard times during this pandemic. I'll be honest, 2020, I spent most of the year in a nursing home rehabbing. I'm still going through some things. I'm dealt with some medical issues with my feet. I'm actually sitting here in a wheelchair right now because they want me to stay off my feet. But I know the Lord, He has His perfect will for us. And I trust in Him and I hope in Him. He's my all in all. He is Yahweh, my King. And I just want to honor Him in all things and to do His perfect will. He said, those who love me keep my commandments. And that's literally being almost like guard or protect, stand over, and I want to lay a hold of His commandments and to share them with others and to see the lost come to know Him as I have come to know Him.
Wow. I know the one time we spoke back, I think it was like 2014, that I've always wanted to do something with you as far as this show, right? You know, it's 2021 and we finally met up and so forth. But brother, I never had forgot our discussion. And I knew that your show on Limited X Radio, that you were a loyal person to do that show. And I do remember that roundtable. I think I was kind of coming on with Jeremy at the end of that. If it that would have been late 2013, but I remember that Brad and Jeremy were talking about this roundtable they were going to do, that they were doing, and so I never heard that. You know, I was kind of like still coming through some things, and you know, like I said, the Lord put Jeremy and I together, and it's been a blessing, just like He's put you and I together. So if there's anything in the future that we can work together on, or any way that you know, maybe I could help. You know, the word honor means to hold up in value. And brother, I honor you. I hold you up in value because I know of the work that you've been doing, and it has to be a conviction by God, you know. You know, so anyways, at this point, what I have to say is this: could you give us some contact information that we can get a hold of your organization, or even if you or are there other organizations that you'd like to give phone numbers of, or websites, or just names?
Well, the big one, and like I said earlier, the Human Trafficking National Hotline. If you have an issue in your area and you don't know who to reach out in your area, whatever state you're in, like some here in Ohio, in Lorain County, your listeners may be in another state or someplace, you can call a national human trafficking hotline, and they would instruct you to whoever would be in your area that you would need to contact, whether it be law enforcement or the human trafficking organization. And that phone number for the national hotline is 1-888-373-7888. Like I said, that's the national hotline. And I just really encourage people to look up in their area, and you can contact your Attorney General's office in whatever state you're in to look up human trafficking organizations or task force. If you live here in Lorain County, Ohio, and you're listening to this broadcast, our hotline for our human trafficking group, the Human Trafficking Collaborative in Lorain County, our phone number is 440-305-7953. So if you're here in Lorain County, that's how you can get a hold of us. And like I said, go on to your Attorney General's website in whatever state you're in, and to look up any organizations that are dealing with human trafficking, and get to know them and get their phone numbers, their contact information. And in that way, if you hear something, you can call them as well as law enforcement. And you just might save somebody's life.
Amen. And it's out there. Okay, well, I'm going to sign us off. This has been Northgate Dialogue. And we've had just had a show on human trafficking, and with my friend, my brother, Shawn Cleveland. And Shawn, God bless, and keep up the good work. And hopefully we can communicate again.
Sounds good to me, brother.
Okay, I'm signing off.